This is my final evaluation for my Factuality project. So at the beginning of this project, obviously, my aim was to create a 2 to 5 minute video, just filming some live music in a free venue. One thing I obviously really want to go into is filming live music as a career. I think it'd be really cool to just film concerts, festivals, all that jazz. And so this whole project really was to sort of gain experience in doing that. I sort of said briefly in my proposals about how this piece wasn't necessarily obviously I had to create a documentary piece, and it did have context and whatever, but it wasn't necessarily set out to be absolutely perfect. This was more of an experience, a sort of learning curve, I suppose, for me, sort of trying out a lot of new things that I haven't done before. Obviously one of those being filming live music in itself. I haven't ever sort of stepped out my comfort zone with filming as such, as the first sort of 3 projects we did last year. So that was 60-second film, animation, and interactive film. Apart from animation, because obviously I hadn't ever done that before, but I hadn't really stepped out of my comfort zone in terms of filming. And what I mean by that is I didn't really try sort of going to a place I hadn't ever been before, with the exception of Isaac's house, but then it was still sort of quite an easy place to film. I hadn't ever done anything where I was filming something live, so I only had one opportunity to film it. All of my, obviously, films, and that's including my FMP as well, it's been sort of a fictional piece, so I didn't necessarily have to film everything on that day and make sure the quality was good and the the footage was okay and the audio was okay, because if I had messed something up I could redo a scene. So I think this project I have really sort of stepped out of my comfort zone in the sense that I needed to make sure that all of my footage was correct, otherwise I might have rubbish footage for, say, one of the nights I went down, and that would be a complete waste of my night. So I think I've done really well for sort of just exploring that and taking a chance and being able to adapt myself to that. I think even though in my FMP I sort of pushed the boat out a little bit and sort of sort of had high expectations for myself, and I was very sort of, I can't think of the word, basically, even though in my FMP I sort of tried to push myself, I step out my comfort zone, that's sort of what I'm thinking of, not as much. I didn't do it as much as I have in this project. Another thing that sort of demonstrates I've pushed myself out of my comfort zone is using a completely different software to edit on. Obviously, all through last year I had used Final Cut to edit on, and this year they sort of suggested about using Premiere to us. 1, because it's supposed to be a bit better. 2, so I can get the knowledge, because some companies may use both or one or the other, so it's good to have knowledge on both. And 3, because obviously it's on all the Macs. So I thought I'd give Premiere a crack and just see how I get on with it. Obviously I'd never used it before, it was quite tricky in the beginning. I must admit I did really struggle sort of figuring out how to do everything, but from a few sort of tutorials from Rich and just by me sort of spending some time on it and just exploring it, I sort of did get to grips with the basics, and I'm really proud of myself because of that, because most of it was sort of done by myself. We learned little bits in Rich's lesson, however I feel that the stuff we did learn, had I have not had the sort of initiative to try and learn myself, I feel that I would be stuck and I probably wouldn't be where I am with my edit now. I think that I have, with my circumstances, I've explained in sort of my ongoing evaluations that obviously I had a nightmare because I'd started editing on my laptop and I had a free trial downloaded of Premiere because I hadn't bought it yet, because obviously it's quite a big investment to just go buy Premiere, and we have it on the college computers. So whereas when I started editing, I was editing on my laptop and it was fine, but the free trial ran out. So luckily I was relieved because my boyfriend's parents said that they'd be able to get it on the Mac, on their Mac for me. They did that, which was cool, and I started editing through half term, and I got a sort of a rough, I've got a pretty clean edit together. I just needed to edit some audio clips and add some text in, and sort of finish it off and finalise it and whatever, refine it. And it was only until I went into college with sort of my my edit that I'd done over half term, and sort of the week following half term, I went into college the week after and attempted to open up my project and realised that I couldn't edit anything, which was brilliant because obviously, you know, I was set to go into college to finish off my film. The reason because of this was college had not updated the software of Premiere. So the Premiere that I had on my boyfriend's Mac was a 2018 version, whereas the one in college was a 2017 version. This just meant that obviously I'd edited on the fully updated software and I couldn't open it because the college computers weren't updated to the correct software. So this was a big pain because obviously I just wanted to get it finished. I mean, luckily I was able to go to my boyfriend's house on the Monday and finish it. But this was sort of a big obstacle, and most of the stuff I did on the Monday was quite tricky stuff that really I wanted to be in college to do, because it was putting text in, it was altering the audio so the volumes were right, it was sort of refining it. I wanted to get feedback from teachers and I wanted some help with how to actually change audio and put text in. And most of that I had to try and figure out by myself. So to be honest, I think that although it's annoying, and sort of I probably could have done a better job had I been able to do it in college, I think it's another big step for me and another sort of big achievement, as actually I managed to finish my video and edit it, and do all these new techniques that I've only just learned in the last couple of weeks all by myself, which actually makes me feel really proud about it. So I feel that actually in this project I have sort of really pushed myself and I've really developed my skills. I feel sort of so much so much more confident on Premiere now, compared to what I did when I was first looking at it, and I feel like I can go into this year sort of knowing the basics and being able to edit sort of videos and using that software. And I feel as though, I don't know, that I've sort of done a decent job for sort of the time I had and the circumstances I was in, and you know, sort of the knowledge I had and the knowledge I had previously as well. I think that in the future it would be really, really, really handy, and I mean, I'm going to say something in the Voice of Learner as well, but I think it'd be really handy if actually students can have the updated version on all of the Macs. Just all over the campus, because I think that was one big drawback. I mean, my boyfriend is currently in Crawley, so he wasn't even home when I was trying to edit on Monday. And I had to sort of try and pester his mum and ask him if I could, ask her if I could come round. So even though it didn't end up being too much of a problem, it puts me out and it puts other people out, and it means that, you know, sort of, I can't use the equipment that I'm paying for, basically. You know, we pay this materials fee, and I can't actually use what I'm paying for because it hasn't been updated. I just think it's a bit poor, but I'm gonna have a speak to Voice of Learner anyway. But so I feel really accomplished with both, sort of, you know, learning so many more skills on how to film live music, and learning so many skills on Premiere. Another thing is, I think that I've really explored audio in this project. I haven't been as confident with the audio side of things in my last few projects, because I didn't really know what I was doing with it. I obviously had to do a voiceover in my final major project, but I hadn't properly thought about, you know, how to alter it, how it might sound, you know, where to point the mic, how, you know, making sure it's even plugged into the camera. So obviously I had trouble with that in the very first on the very first day I filmed. That's just because it was sort of loose and I didn't put the headphones in. So I feel that I've learned a lot about audio too. Obviously Rich did a little workshop for me just before I was sort of going on to film. I think it was just before I booked a camera out, and it was one of the weeks that I didn't end up filming because of the car and everything. But he sort of showed me, you know, how to set up the Tascam, and before he showed me that, I didn't actually know that I had to set up the Tascam. So there's all these sort of small things that are building together to just widen my skill set, and I'm glad that it's all worked out, because this whole project, I wanted it to be a sort of learning curve. I wanted to focus on what I learned and not necessarily the outcome of my project, but, you know, focus on learning all these new skills for sort of potentially things I want to do in the future, and just skills that I'm going to need throughout the rest of this college year. So I'm really sort of glad that that ended up sort of panning out how I wanted it to. In terms of my film, I think it's definitely something that I was looking to create. I feel it's got a very poetic style, which is obviously exactly what I was going for. Like I said before, I feel that the shots are really good. They're something that you'd see on something like the BBC Live Lounge, which is where I got majority of my inspiration from. I feel like for sort of a first time properly recording audio, I feel like my audio is very good, and it sort of helps to bring that sort of community feel to my video. I think that's really, really good, and that's what I was looking for. I really like the text I put in, and that was sort of to put in to try and create a sort of a kind of poetic style, and it was put in creatively to try and sort of add a bit of something to the video, and it sort of almost enhances how sort of natural my interviews were. It sort of shows that they weren't scripted, and, you know, I had the ums and ers in there, and I had the pauses and the sort of trying to think of what to say, and it makes it feel a lot more natural, and I think that adds to the sort of poetic and sort of rustic vibe I was trying to go for, which I think was really good. I mean, had I had more time, I think there's quite a few things that I had changed, and I might look to change in the future if, you know, I have a spare minute or two. One of them being, there was a few I think, interview clips which sounded a little bit quiet, but I think that just adds to the sort of natural feel of the environment was loud and busy, and you know, you aren't always going to be able to hear someone, so I think that kind of adds to it a little bit, but I think it could have just been enhanced slightly. And when I go on to learn more about how to sort of like alter the audio in Premiere, I think I'll be able to do this better, and so I might be able to amend my project in the near future. I think another thing that I would change is I might try and find a way to bring up the brightness slightly. I think there's a few shots that were slightly dark. And I don't know if it was just because what I was watching it on, but a few shots, because the venue was so dark, the sort of shots came out quite dark, and I couldn't really bring up the ISO anymore because it would just make it grainy. So I sort of had to compromise and create a sort of darker image that was sort of better quality than a really bright image that just looked rubbish. So I think maybe in Premiere, if I learn a bit more, again in the near future, I can look how to sort of put enhancing sort of filters on my footage just to bring the sort of key points out and sort of brighten it and whatever. I also think if I'm ever to do anything like this again, I might try and take a light. The reason I didn't for this project was because I felt that, you know, I didn't know if the sort of bands would feel comfortable with me sort of putting lights up and shining them in their faces, and I didn't know how the venue would feel about that because obviously they already had their own lighting. It was just sort of, it ended up being quite dark, but that'll be definitely something if I'm to do this again. I think I'd ask the venue and sort of get their opinion on it and see what they think about it, and look at sort of maybe taking just a small light just to sort of enhance the performer and make them stand out a little bit more, because I felt on a few bits they sort of blended into the background, only ever so slightly, but sort of enough for me to not feel as pleased with it. I think one last thing is obviously there are a few spelling mistakes in my what do you call them, caption sort of things, when I've sort of written out what people are saying. There's a few spelling mistakes in that, and I think that's purely down to sort of time. Obviously, like I explained, I had the whole issue with Premiere, and on the Monday, because I just wanted to get it done and I could only do it in my boyfriend's house, I sort of rushed slightly. And this was only because sort of my boyfriend's parents were looking to go out, and even though they said it was no problem me staying, I didn't want to put them out for my project. And I mean, to be honest, I shouldn't have to feel like that in terms of, you know, college should update my computer so I don't have to put other people out. But I ended up sort of rushing the ending bit slightly, so there's a few spelling mistakes, but I think they can be easily amended anyway. And if you're sort of watching it quickly, I don't think they're as noticeable. I think it's more or less just if you're looking from a critical perspective, and if well, like me, if I am sort of assessing myself quite harshly, I will look at that and say, well, you know, it's a bit sloppy or whatever. But I think that can all be amended in the near future. I think it was just due to circumstances. There was just a few slip-ups because I was sort of getting a little bit stressed and just trying to finish it. I think one other thing that sort of I haven't mentioned yet, if I was ever to do this again, I think I'd look at getting a bigger crew. One of the things I couldn't do in my film was obviously sync all of the audio up with the people, with the footage. So, like, what I mean by this is, sort of say if an artist was playing a song and I was sort of filming them playing that song, I couldn't link up the audio in the video because it would the video would just be a continuous shot if I was to do that. So I feel if I was to bring several cameras into it and a bigger crew, I feel that I'd be able to match it as I'd have 2 cameras recording at once. Even though I took my DSLR along with the C100, I feel as though the DSLR didn't look as good as the C100. I couldn't get it to sort of match because they were different cameras, and I hadn't actually researched how to match the 2 cameras together. I sort of put them on the same settings and everything, but they looked different, and one looked brighter and one looked more grainy, and so it was very difficult trying to get them to look the same, and in the end I sort of just left it and used a C100 footage, and I think it looked really good, and I don't think I necessarily needed it to match for this project. I think if I was just solely focusing on the concert side of things and just filming them performing, I think it would be important that I had it match up. But because it was more of a poetic style, and I had the interviews going on as well, I think it made it look nicer that I just had the sort of audio over the top of a load of clips of them performing. I think it looked sort of obviously it was on purpose, and it looked, I don't know, it just gave it a nice feel. I think, I don't know how to explain it really. It obviously didn't look natural because it wasn't what they were singing, but it just looked... Well, I don't really know how to explain it. I'm just going to say it looked cool. I mean, in my eyes, I think I was happy with how it looked. I think it does still look professional. I think you can still find things like that are professional. It doesn't necessarily have to match. And if you make it so dramatically mismatched, I don't think it has such a dramatic effect as if you were just, like, if I had just sort of... attempted to match it and then left a few bits, so it looked like I was trying to match it and did a bad job, it wouldn't have looked as effective. But because I sort of purposely decided to have them all sort of different and have them not necessarily matching, I think it sort of added to the effect and the poetic mode on the video. In terms of sort of background work in this project, I feel that I really need to find a suitable way to sort of plan out what I'm going to do. I think, obviously I will never get away from the fact that I do procrastinate. But I feel that for next project, I'm planning to work with Frankie, which might sort of encourage me to sort of get things done a bit quicker and a bit more efficiently and make a plan. But I feel I want to sort of start writing out to-do lists. So every beginning of the lesson, I'll write out what I'm going to do, sort of, my appropriate aims for the lesson, basically, and then maybe what I'm going to do when I get home or whatever, or set something for myself to do every night I get home. So even if it's just like half an hour every night, or half an hour to an hour every night, just set myself targets for what I want to do. I attempted to do it in this project, but it just didn't really work out, and I sort of slumped on it. But I feel I'm going to try and get like a whiteboard to put in my room, and I'm going to get bits of paper or flashcards maybe just to write out, so it gives me different ways of recording what I'm going to do and when, and it might just help me to get into that mode of doing half an hour every night, or making sure I get all my targets done, because I feel that was a big thing in this project, and I didn't sort of have a continuous plan. I sort of just did it, and then I was really productive one day, and then I just didn't do anything the next day, or it sort of followed that sort of path. It was a bit bumpy, a bit up and down, and I feel that I can't carry on like that. So I'm going to try this project to really get into the swing of making a plan and sticking to it, and hopefully that will then encourage me to do that for all of my projects and then my FMP, because I think it will be a lot easier for me to have a structure in my FMP, because last year I sort of flopped and didn't really have any structure, and then I got really stressed out, and obviously I don't want that again. So I'm going to try and get into the swing of having a structure. I think through my eyes, I think I'm pleased with this project. I think that I could show this to my audience and them like it, and I think I think I've done a good job. And I mean, I wouldn't say that if I thought I'd done a bad job. I would sort of criticize myself quite harshly, and I still am criticizing myself quite harshly, because I know there's things that I can change to make better. But I feel that I've really I've come a long way in this project, in terms of not necessarily the background work, because obviously I'm still in the same position of, you know, I need to try and organise myself a bit better. But in terms of the production side of things, I feel that I'm much more confident on Premiere. I'm really confident with a C100. One thing I didn't explain actually is, you know, I used a C100 for the first time, and it was really tricky in the beginning, trying to sort of figure out how to actually use the camera, and how to sort of set it up, how to frame things, how to get the microphone to work. And I feel as though I've come a long way, as I know I could pick up the C100 and I could quite easily film a good piece of footage, because I know sort of you know, I don't know everything about it, but I know enough to sort of I feel make a good video. So I feel that I've come a long way in terms of my practical skills, and that I'm going to be able to take that on into future projects, and really sort of improve my skills and improve my filming. But I think that's sort of the end of my final evaluation, really. Yeah, I think the major sort of key turning points that I want to sort of improve on for, you know, for the future, would be sort of, I need to find a good way to try and organise myself and make a plan and set targets for myself. So I think that will sort of encourage me to sort of fall into a routine and get the things that I need done, so that I don't have to then come to the end of my project to worry about it. I think I need to sort of voice my opinion on Premiere, and the fact that it's disturbing me from coming into college and editing my project, and it's causing hassle for me, because I'm not able to edit it in college. And then any free time I have after this project, I want to go back and just refine my film and sort of alter anything that I sort of you know, had a bit of a hiccup on, and, you know, had a few spelling mistakes, or the audio was a bit quiet, and I want to improve that so I can put it out, because I am very proud of this piece of work, and I'd like to be able to show it for you know, I want to be able to show the best that I can do. But that is the end of my final evaluation. Thank you for listening.